Joins us in studio now, so cleared by the CRL Commission. Just a few hours later, the Hawks arrest Prophet Shepherd Bushiri. They're saying a prophet, but we know it's Shepherd Bushiri.
Yes, we do know, Francis. We can confirm that. A very credible source within the Hawks has confirmed that for us. He was arrested this morning together with his wife. These charges relate to 2015, where allegedly monies, amounts totaling about 16 million, were allegedly laundered through the church. Those are the allegations that he's facing at this stage with his wife. We know that a couple of cars were seized as well of Prophet Bushiri, belonging to Prophet Bushiri and his wife. Now, you'd recall in the report that I just filed now, the CRL in that report that it released today said they were hoping to facilitate a meeting between Prophet Bushiri and the families of the deceased in that matter, the stampede in December last year. Clearly that meeting is not going to go ahead now because he's now facing these charges and will appear in the Pretoria Commercial Crimes Court on Monday.
So these are old claims about fraud and money laundering. The timing is very interesting. Today, as the CRL Commission wraps up, I guess the Hawks would say that's just coincidence.
Look, from what I gauged when our colleague had spoken to the Hawks, they said that this was brought to their attention in 2018. So clearly the evidence that they must have in their possession relates to allegations of this alleged money laundering and fraud in 2015. Someone must have blown the whistle on this. Hence the Hawks are now acting on it in 2019. They must believe that they have enough evidence to take this particular matter to court. So I think at this stage, you know, the timing is quite impeccable. On the very same day that the CRL does release this report, essentially clearing him and saying that instead she'd placed the chairperson of the CRL, Toko Mkhwanazi, who said that essentially on that day the church itself had complied with all the bylaws and the acts that would guide you before you hold such a big event, and essentially it was the Tshwane Metro Police as well as the South African Police Service who were not present on the day of the accident, which could have led to you know, a much greater or better response to the incident itself that had taken place.
Which is interesting because I remember speaking to the police. They say they weren't informed of the deaths. They were only told through media inquiries a day later, but now the finger pointing back at police.
Now this is
so they should have been there because it was a big gathering. Is that
That's right, Francis, and that's part of what the CRL hearings had gone through, was that the police, as per the level of what would I say, the level of the event itself. The first responders were scheduled to be the police. Now remember, with an event of that nature, 2 days later was supposed to be the crossover event of the church, which is going into the new year, the huge gathering that even international guests would attend here in South Africa. So you had the police who were supposed to be the first responders, according to this report by the CRL, who were the police who were not on location, and that is the evidence that was given, or the testimony that was given during the hearings themselves. So the police were not present. In that clip that the CRL chairperson, she said that they admitted that they were supposed to be there. In fact, they were given leave from the 27th and the 28th, so on those 2 days when they were scheduled to look at whether the area was safe, whether there would be enough crowd control, whether there would be a number of things put in place before the gathering itself had taken place. They were on leave.
Because these are huge gatherings. Finally, what about the claims that the bodies were snuck away by the church? Well,
the church has always stood by the argument that there was no one. The police were not there. But you had the families. You saw when the families, one of the families, the relatives, one of the bereaved, the families of one of the deceased, had also gave testimony in the hearings, breaking down, so they cannot believe.
Angry with the church.
And how could the church continue with the service itself after such a drastic or terrible incident had taken place? So the families were clearly very upset about that itself. And just, Francis, before we wrap up, on the issue of the arrest itself, I must clarify that if the prophet himself is found guilty together with his wife, in terms of the law, they could face up to about 15 or even more years in jail if they're found guilty of the fraud, alleged fraud and corruption that they're accused of now.
And I think as it goes to court, we'll hear more details of how this alleged money laundering actually happened. Thank you very much for being with us, Chriselda Lewis. Now, justice must prevent